Feeding a family on a tight budget isn't always easy, let alone hosting a big dinner for friends and loved ones. But I found ways to make it work, cooking everything from scratch and stretching our grocery budget without sacrificing good food. In this video, I'll share some of our go-to low-cost meals that are easy to make in large quantities, plus tips on how we keep our grocery bill low, even while hosting on a single below poverty line income, because if you don't already know, I'm a stay-at-home mom and my partner works, but he only makes a little bit above minimum wage, so we don't really have that much disposable income. So on tonight's menu, we're making homemade bread with hummus, balsamic vinegar, and rosemary-infused olive oil for dipping, a flavorful vegan shepherd's pie, and a lime cheesecake for dessert, so let's just get started. I always start prepping first thing in the morning. If you're a mom to little ones, you totally get it. Things don't always go as planned, so I like to space things out and avoid the stress of last-minute cooking. Even though Kai was home to help today because it was the weekend, I wanted to prep ahead so I could take breaks when Makai needed me. I first started prepping the bread because it needs time to rise, so I usually start with anything that is dough related. This recipe is simple, reliable, and budget-friendly. Flour, yeast, water, oil, and a little bit of sweetener. Whole wheat is usually our go-to, but today I wanted to switch it up and make white bread for a change. Buying flour, grains, and legumes in bulk saves so much money compared to pre-packaged options. I also stock up on things when they go on sale and store them properly so they last a long time. Switching to making your own things like bread, pita breads, naan breads, flatbreads, anything of the sort will save you literally so much money, especially in today's world with inflation. Everything is just so expensive, and if you have a big family or you're just like us and you like a lot of wheat, you can go through those things pretty fast. I know my mom's family, which she still has a lot of her kids living at home, goes through a loaf of bread, no joke, in like a day. So when you compare the cost of making it yourself compared to buying it, it adds up quick. Like, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of dollars over the months. So it's definitely one thing that is a great switch and it will save you so much time. And at first it does seem a little bit intimidating, I'm not gonna lie. But once you do it and get in a rhythm of making it, it's honestly not that hard. It takes maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes to put it together. Yes, you have to put all the ingredients in and, mix it and fold and stretch it for a couple minutes, but the rest is just basically a waiting game. And this recipe that I'm making here makes 2 loaves, so it will last a little bit longer for our family. And also sometimes we freeze a loaf because we don't go through that bread that fast. And then there's another recipe that I like to use that I can link below. This one we make more often, and it's a whole wheat bread, and for that one all you need is whole wheat flour, yeast, and water. That one doesn't have oil or sugar, so it's even cheaper. As you can see, I already prepped the bread because that needs to rise for tonight, and I'm about to make a cheesecake for tonight, but I need to sit down and eat something because it is now 11 and I have not eaten yet. And if I don't eat because I'm breastfeeding, I get very shaky and stuff, probably has something to do with my blood sugar levels. So I just made this granola. I'm gonna eat this. Makai's going to go to my mom's house, and then I'm going to finish the cheesecake and then start prepping the actual food for dinner. So yes, this is our second dinner that we're hosting within basically a week, where we invited everyone over that helped us with the house. So my mom, her friend, and my dad. If you're new here, I'm Jill. I like to cook a lot and make things from scratch, so I make content on making things from scratch, whether it's food, shampoo, etc. I'm going to go eat this granola and share it with Makai because he loves granola, and just get back to cooking and baking. I'll see you soon. So good. And this is my jumpsuit that you probably see me wear in literally every video because I'm obsessed. It's so comfy, and I guess it must have to do with the material that it doesn't really absorb scent, because I can wear it a couple days in a row and it doesn't smell. This is my second day wearing it, but I obviously take it off to sleep and I don't wear it all day. But as you can see here, I don't know if the camera picks it up, but Makai's dirty fingerprints all over it. But you know what? That's okay. I'm still wearing it because it's one of the only things that I actually like, that it's cute, comfy, and not made out of plastic. I was going through my closet the other day and literally all my clothes, all of them, polyester, plastic. This is the only thing not made out of plastic, so I like to wear this, and I want to invest in a couple more. If you're interested, it is from Embody. I always want to say Embody because I'm dyslexic, but it's Embody. I just love it so much that you probably see it in every video, so I wanted to say why you see me wearing it all the time, because it's the only thing I have not made out of plastic. Okay, I'm gonna go share this with Makai now, so see you soon. I just finished eating my breakfast and I'm about to make the dessert because it needs to sit because it's a cheesecake. I was gonna make a vegan like lemon square, but I was going through my cupboards the other day and I have so many of these Epicure things because my sister used to sell them and my mom had a bunch that she just never used, so she gave them to me. And I'm trying to use one at least once a week. It just makes things easier. And I found this citrus no-bake lime cheesecake. So instead of making something from scratch, we're just going to do this. I mean, it's still basically from scratch. I still have to make the pie shell and add some things to this. You might have seen a lot of my content so far is like vegan recipes, vegan this, vegan that. I want to preface by saying we eat mainly vegan, at least me and Makai. But if you had to label our diet, we're vegetarian. We eat everything, like not everything, but we eat dairy sometimes. Basically eat everything except meat, but Kai does eat meat. And I like to incorporate dairy here and there just so my body stays used to it, because if not, you have enzymes in your body that help break down lactose, and if you don't have lactose for a long time, those enzymes don't get used, and you can have more issues when you start eating dairy again. So we do eat it sometimes, and that's why I'm making a cheesecake today, because I know my mom loves cheesecake and I'm sure she'll love this. So let's get started. With the bread rising, I did a quick cleanup and started on dessert. This no-bake lime cheesecake is easy and a great way to use up ingredients before they go bad, because nothing, and I mean nothing on my watch, at least in our fridge, goes to waste. If we have leftovers, I eat them, and if we have an ingredient going bad, I use it. So I grated the zest and juiced a lime before blending a block of cream cheese to soften it. Then I added the Epicure mix that I showed you earlier, but you could easily make your own spice blend. It's not that hard. This basically just had some sugar and a couple things in it that we could have easily added ourselves, but like I said, I wanted to use this up to not waste it and just use what I have. So you saw me add the lime in here, but in hindsight, I'd probably only use half the lime zest next time because it was a bit more tart than I wanted, to be honest, but you live and you learn. So I slowly mixed in 1 cup of cream, but since we don't use cream often, and like I said, I hate food waste, I just ended up adding all the leftover from the carton because the cheesecake is frozen and the texture, if it was a little more liquidy, didn't matter that much. And I just knew personally that since we don't really use cream, if I didn't use it all up, it'd probably sit there and end up going bad. So that's just what I did. So that would be tip number 3 on saving money, is just use things before they go bad. I feel like most people are going to say like, yeah, duh, like obviously, but food waste in North America is such a big thing, and it's kind of sad to see how much food goes to waste because there's so many starving people all over the world, and that's why we make sure that we waste almost nothing. And even things that you wouldn't think have a purpose, like, you know, citrus peels or peelings from onions and garlics, we make a use for it. The citrus peels we infuse with vinegar for a cleaner. A lot of peelings of vegetables that, you know, you typically would just throw out, we use in our homemade veggie stock, which saves us a bunch of money again. And things that we, you know, can't really use in the veggie stock, like say broccoli is not good to put in it because it will make it more bitter. Leftover things like that, which I mean, we don't really have leftover broccoli, but say the outside of the cabbage is wilted, again, we still probably use that. But just, I'm trying to give examples. We have an outdoor compost, so everything that we don't use, that we can't put in our veggie stock or we can't use for alternative things, that's where we put it so that we can give it back to the garden. But the main point of what I'm trying to say is just try to lower your food waste. Maybe buy less or meal plan, or you saw here, like I used a little bit more than what the recipe called for, but I just know personally that we don't really use cream on a day-to-day basis, so I wanted to use it up because I knew it would just sit in the fridge and go bad. And also rotate the things in your fridge, so when things are getting older, bring them to the front so you see them and you don't forget about them. Or if you have a lot of leftovers, freeze them. There's so many ways to reduce your food waste, and it's actually probably my number 1 tip because not only will it save you money, it's just better for the environment and just makes you feel better, and not about like, it doesn't feel like you're just throwing money down the drain or food that someone who needed it could eat or use. Anyway, done with that ramble. Next, this is the base of the cheesecake that I made. I had leftover graham crumbs from months, and I mean months ago, from Kai's birthday, which was in August, but they didn't really go bad, so I kept them because I knew eventually I would use them, and this is when I used them. This is what I needed them for, and I mixed it with some oat flour that I made from scratch. I mean, when I say make from scratch, literally all you need to make oat flour is just to blend large flaked, or what are they called? Large flaked or rolled oats. That's the name of them. So I blended that together to add to the mix because I know I didn't have enough graham crumbs, and then I mixed it with roughly half a cup of butter, but you could also use coconut oil or really water if you need it to. It just makes it stick together when you press it in the pan. And then I also added a splash of maple syrup because here in Canada, that is the elite sweetener. Not only does it taste amazing, but it's full of healthy minerals for you as well. And because we live in Canada, it is relatively affordable when you buy it in bulk. And actually in the past, we have tapped our own maple syrup from our trees. We just haven't had the time to do it this year with all the other things, but I want to get back into that. We don't have maple trees on our property, but we do on our family's property, like my mom's and dad's property. So next I just layered, you saw me press the base into the pan and then put the cream filling on top, and then just put it into the freezer to set and freeze until moving on to the next thing. With the dessert chilling and the bread rising, it was time to prep the star of the show, the vegan shepherd's pie. My mom said that this is even better than the classic version because it's packed with spices and layers of flavor. Even if you're not vegan, I highly recommend trying this, and it's made with lentils and potatoes, two really cheap ingredients, especially if you live in Canada, and especially Prince Edward Island, which is a small province in PEI. If you don't know, the two things that we're known for here is potatoes and Anna Green Gables. Because our iron-rich soil gives us some of the best potatoes, and a good potato really does make a difference. And because we're known for our potatoes and they grow all over the island, they're pretty cheap here. So that's tip number 4, is to buy locally and buy what's in season. I know you probably think like, potatoes, they're not in season right now. This video was filmed like the start of January. It's cold, nothing's growing. But these potatoes were actually picked in almost the end of November by our neighbor, and he gave us a whole bag for free. But even if we bought them like from the store or from a farmer, they wouldn't be that expensive. And the great thing about potatoes is that they last a long time if stored properly in a cool, dark place. So even though these potatoes at this point were probably a little over a month old, they still tasted like almost as fresh as the day that we got them. And especially with the potential of tariffs rolling in, no matter where you live, it's even important now than ever to support your local economy and try to buy local. Not only does this improve the quality of the food and increases the nutrients because it doesn't have to come from as far, typically more fresh, therefore more full of nutrients, it's also just better to support our local economies during this time. And this tip kind of goes along with this, but building a community or even joining Facebook groups like about homesteading or farming and gardening and doing switches with other people. And even if it's this type of season and you're not growing anything or you just don't have the space, you can, make bread like I am and trade it for potatoes, or make some cookies and trade it for some fresh veggies. That way you're giving back to your community, and then you're also getting something in return, and then building these connections and support. During these times, it's more important than ever to rely on our community and to build community. And I just want to say, building a community is something that you have to be intentional with and put effort into, and something that I am definitely still working on. It's something I really have to work on. But building a community just doesn't happen overnight or happen without effort. You have to look for those type of people and put effort into building those relationships. A great tip is joining Facebook groups, especially as a stay-at-home mom, that I'm not really meeting people in person, especially this time of year in the winter. It's not like I'm running into people at the playground or going for a walk. And another great tip is to get to know your neighbors. I feel like in this day and age, we are so disconnected from the people that live around us. I know growing up, we always knew everyone on our street, but in the recent years, I didn't know the people next to me, or I barely knew them. But when we moved into our new house, we made it intention and priority to go over and say hi to our neighbors. And over the last couple months, we brought them homemade goodies like bread and cookies and things like that. And in return, which, I mean, we weren't expecting anything, but they have brought us things in return as well, out of kindness. And we just also, it's nice to have that relationship of a friendship with your neighbors and to learn, skills that they might have. One of my neighbors is 91 and she had 8 children, and she's just full of wisdom and stories. And I feel like how I want to raise my children is similar to how people raise their children back in her day, more connected to Mother Earth and just more simple and making things from scratch and not putting their kids on TV as a babysitter. I just love to listen to her stories and how she raised her kids and how she also views how I raised Makai. She mentions that it seems like I'm an old-fashioned mom, and I love hearing that. Tip number 6 is keeping it simple when you're spicing your food and using things like onions, garlic, and ginger. Onions and garlic are relatively easy to grow. At least I've heard from others. I haven't grown them before because this is the first year that we actually have our own yard and can grow whatever we want, so we are growing them this year. But even if you don't grow them yourselves, they're relatively cheap to buy at the grocery store, and you can buy them in bulk because if you store them right in a cold, dark place, they can last a long time. So with all our foods, we use a lot of onions, garlic, and ginger, and it's also whole food, so it's better for you anyway. And with the spices, we like to keep it simple and have some staples on hand. And also another amazing way to flavor your food is with veggie stock. Veggie stock is actually really easy to make, and as I mentioned before, you can just use old veggie scraps to make it, along with maybe some fresh carrots and celery. And with that, you can make large batches, and it is really cheap. But even if you don't want to make your own, you can buy the pre-made cubes, and those are also cheap. I know when we run out, we use those. Like today, I didn't have any homemade left on stock, and I didn't have time to make it today, so I just used one of those cubes, and those last forever, so we always have a pack as a backup. But that adds so much flavor to your food, and it's a cheap way to flavor it. And then tip number 7 is buying things in bulk and just having it. Things that don't really go bad, at least. Buying in bulk flour and sugar and spices will save you a lot of money, and then just having it on hand so you can make those things from scratch, and you don't have to run to the store to get bread because you forgot you had flour, or buying like such a small thing of curry powder, because the larger you buy, if you know you're going to use it, it will be cheaper. And that's why we like to cook a lot of the same meals each week, is because we use what we have and we use the staples, and within those staples we mix it up. And usually one day a week I'll try a new recipe, but for the most part I stick to the same things because it's just cheaper that way, instead of going out and trying all these new recipes every day and getting all these new ingredients. When we do like to try new recipes, I like to keep it within a frame of ingredients that I already have, or I'll take the base recipe and then adjust it to what I already have. And this goes back to the tip on just using what you have. It will save you so much money instead of having like a cupboard full of these spices that you use for one recipe and then never use again, or these just ingredients in general that you use for one recipe and never use it again. Just use what you have. And you can see kind of when I'm cooking in the background, we do have, it looks like a decent amount of stuff, but we use all of it in those mason jars on the bottom. It's a lot of nuts and oats because I make my own granola, and I also make my own flours out of almonds and things like that. And then we do have a lot of spices because we cook everything from scratch, but we use them all. It's not stuff that just sits there. We are constantly filling the containers. Although I do have to say, we do have a decent stack up of Epicure spices right now because my mom has given me so much because they are going out of business, and she bought a lot from her friend because they were like $1 each. And she just had so many and she wasn't even using them. They just sat in her cupboard, so now they're sitting in my cupboard. But I do use them, just not as often as my other spices. And I think I mentioned this at the start of the video, but we try to use one of the like pre-packaged a week, and it just makes it easier for me to have like a meal plan idea already. And it's just the spices, so usually I have the other things that can go into it. And a lot of them are actually meat-based, and I just substitute it with tofu or lentils because we usually have both on hand. And that's another thing I kind of want to mention about making things from scratch to save money. It's not something that you have to like literally spend all day long making everything from scratch. I know when I watch these types of videos, a lot of people present it as they're making everything from scratch all day long. They have these big families, 8 kids, and they're making everything from scratch, and you know, it takes them all day long because as you can see in this video, I spend all day cooking basically. But when you make things from scratch, it doesn't have to be like that. You can batch prep a lot of things. Like my granola, I make that from scratch and eat that almost every day because it's quick and easy once it's ready. And I literally make enough for like 2 months, so I only have to make it that once. And then same with the bread, I'll make a double batch, so it makes 2 loaves, and I'll have one and then freeze one, so I only have to make it basically once every 2 weeks. And same with anything kind of floured based, like pita breads or naan breads, I'll make a bunch at once, so I only have to do it the once a week or once every 2 weeks. And same with oat milk, that's one I kind of make every week because it's better when it's fresh. I don't want to make such a large batch, but you kind of get the drift. And like I said, I don't put the pressure on myself to always make everything from scratch. We have those veggie cubes when I'm in a rush, or maybe it's a day that Makai is super cranky. I have these meals that I can put together that are really quick and are still like from scratch, but we don't go to the extreme where we make our pasta from scratch, or that we make our butter from scratch. And for people who do that, nothing against those people, and maybe one day we'll be there. But as a mom with a toddler, like a 1-year-old, that can be fussy at times. It's just, I don't put the expectation to make these elaborate meals for every meal and to make everything from scratch. And I give myself grace if I'm having a bad week or a bad day and I don't want to make something like the bread or the oat milk. I allow myself to buy it, but it's just having these habits that I would say 90% of the time that I make these things from scratch instead of buying it, it just saves money over time, and it's a habit now, so it's not a big deal. But I do give myself grace on those hard days or hard weeks. And like I said, there's meals that you can make from scratch, or you know, relatively from scratch, that are really quick to put together and cheap. Like I have a video coming up with 7 dinner ideas from scratch that are easy, like that I'm sharing the recipe in, and are quick with little ones. It doesn't have to be this elaborate thing where you're spending Sunday to Sunday from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. cooking everything from scratch, because that can be exhausting. That's why I have this system implemented where I kind of batch prep on days and have it for the rest of the week. And Kai, I have to say, is a big help too on the weekends. He likes to cook, so I can have a break from cooking, or even just watching Makai so I can cook more elaborate meals like this. And my community, my mom helps a lot too, so I wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for having those people in my life. But that was a big lesson in motherhood and over the last year, is just getting rid of this all or nothing mentality and instead giving myself grace when I just can't do it all sometimes. Because if you have that all or nothing mentality, you'll just be like, F it, okay, well I can't make the bread from scratch, so must as well just buy it every week. Instead, I give myself grace that if I don't want to make it that day, to either just go without it and then not eat it, because for us bread's not that big of a staple, we don't need it, or to buy it. And the same with oat milk. Like I try to make it 80-90% of the time, but I'm not gonna lie to you guys, there are weeks where I do buy it just because maybe I have a lot on my to-do list that week. Like the other week I was planning all my seeds and I just bought the oat milk because I know I just didn't feel like making it, and you know what? That is okay. Anyways, and that's how I put together an affordable homemade dinner for my family and friends without breaking the budget, and just how we save money on groceries in general. I hope this video gave you some inspiration, whether it's new meal ideas, tips on cooking cooking from scratch, or ways to stretch your grocery budget a little further. Eating well doesn't have to be expensive, and with a little bit of planning and creativity, you can make nourishing, delicious meals that bring people together. Also, I just wanted to mention anything you saw me make in this video, I'll either write the recipe I use down below or link it, just in case you're interested. And if you found this video helpful, let me know in the comments. I love to hear about how you save money on food or what your go-to budget-friendly meals are. We can help each other out in the comments. And if you want more videos like this, recipes, meal planning tips, or ways to live well on less, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.